Okay, so now on the true side, which is not just a mapping or a correspondence between what I'm saying and what I think, but between what I'm saying and what shared reality is, which means there has to be a correspondence between what I think and reality. That means I had to do sense making well before I share something, right? So this is the topic of epistemology. So one is movement past game theory. The next is epistemology. How do we know stuff? So even if nobody was lying and withholding information, the complexity of the world makes epistemology hard. And most people aren't even endeavoring at it. So if no one was lying and I could take all the information as at least truthful, there would be certain epistemic processes that I could apply that I can't apply if I can't even take the sources of signal as being signal without a lot of noise, right? So there's epistemology that I have to have within the context of an environment that has a lot of disinformation. How do I make sense of what is true and what isn't true about signal coming in? And then how do I parse from lots of signal what might be true about reality? And to just get a sense of why, how big a deal this is. You take any of the biggest issues in the world, like the issues that could determine whether or not we keep existing as a species. Okay, so take big environmental issues like climate change. There's disagreement as to whether climate change is really even a thing. And to the extent that it is a thing, what the causes are and what the timescales are. Now, most people who believe fervently, no, climate change is real, 97% of climate scientists agree, it's anthropogenic, greenhouse gases, etc. Most of the people that believe that fervently enough to kind of go into narrative warfare for it have never actually looked at the primary data deeply themselves. And yet there's an almost religious fervor around it that was based on having proxied their sense-making to people who they believe. So the UN said it, or the Gates Foundation said it, or the whatever it is. I've heard it repeated enough times that just through repeatability, I have been programmed to believe this thing is true, which is not that different than believing a fundamentalist religious idea, right? And let's say we take people's fervent ideas on vaccines, or their fervent ideas on the viability of market ideology, or almost anything like that. Almost no one who has fervent ideas has a good epistemic basis for the level of certainty they hold. There's a decoupling between how much certainty they have and how much certainty they should have through right process. And then you look at who are they proxying their sense-making to, and most of the time they're not even proxying their sense-making to the people who did the original research, many of whom disagree with each other and were funded by somebody to say something that is not fully true in the first place, and who maybe were employing epistemic biases themselves. But typically it's somebody else who looked at all of that, and then someone else who looked at all of that. So you might have a bunch of climate scientists into someone who is speaking about that as a climate scientist at a more synthetic level, like a James Hansen or whatever, to then a Gore or someone who is actually speaking to the public, who we're proxying our sense-making to, and we say, okay, how many steps removed is it, and how good was the original data?